Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're your shortcut to getting well informed. And today, well, we're diving into something pretty universal, finding that life partner. Pop culture drills into us that it's all about the feelings, the sparks. What if there's a maybe more structured, deeper way to think about this huge life decision? So for this deep dive, we're looking at how to recognize your king. Is he the one God has ordained for you? It's adapted by Brother Donato S. Powell Sr., originally from Michelle McKinney Hammond. And just to be clear, this isn't your typical relationship advice book. It's coming from a faith perspective, offering a pretty unique angle on, figuring things out. Our mission today, we're going to walk through 10 key principles from this source. The idea is to help you understand a different framework, one that pushes past just like fleeting emotions towards spiritual and practical stuff. And hopefully this deep dive gives you some insights that maybe challenge how you've thought about it before and offer some real, tangible things to look for. Finding a king, someone who fits your journey, aligns with a higher purpose.
Yeah, and the absolute starting point, the bedrock of this whole approach, is that first principle: let God do the choosing. The core idea here is basically entrusting the choice of a husband to the Lord. It pulls from Jeremiah, reminding us, your father knows the plans he has for you. It's presented not just as like a nice idea, but as the essential first step. It kind of shifts the whole search.
That is such a different way of looking at it compared to the follow your heart message we get everywhere, isn't it? The source seems really clear. Start with spiritual and intellectual thinking, not just that initial emotional rush. Why is that separation so important here?
Well, because feelings, powerful as they are, aren't always the most reliable compass for massive life choices, right? There's that line from Jeremiah, "The heart is deceitful above all things." It's pretty stark. It's not saying ignore your feelings entirely, of course, but maybe that for something as big as choosing a life partner, pure emotion can be swayed by, I don't know, infatuation, biases, all sorts of things. So the practical advice, drawing from Proverbs, is to guard your heart, because everything flows from it. It's about letting God's guidance shape your heart's direction rather than just, reacting to every feeling.
That really does push against a lot of romantic ideas, suggesting this more deliberate spiritual grounding for love. And building on that foundation, the next step in the source is this purposeful process: friendship, courtship, then marriage. It really lays out these distinct stages.
Exactly. It paints a clear picture. First up is friendship. That's about walking together in agreement, growing in faith together. Think Amos 3.3, can two walk together except they be agreed? Then you move into courtship. And that's defined by real commitment, a clear intention towards marriage. It's not casual, and only after that solid base is built, then comes marriage, the covenant, the reward built on that groundwork. It even says, look, if you do date, think of it as gathering data, not just, handing your heart over easily.
That framework seems like it could bring a lot of clarity to modern dating, which can feel pretty chaotic sometimes. It gives you kind of structure. Okay, so if we understand that process, what are we actually looking for in a person? Principle 3 gets into that. Evaluate the fruit. Is he rooted in Christ? And it points straight to that biblical idea from Matthew. You will know them by their fruits.
Right, but then the question becomes, what are those fruits, practically speaking? The source highlights some key things. It's more than just saying you have faith. Like, is he genuinely spiritually mature? Is he actively building a relationship with Jesus? Is he accountable? And that means accountable to God, yes, but also to other people, like James talks about, confessing faults, being part of a community. Is he actually living like a man submitted to God's will day to day? And the implication is pretty direct. If you don't see these fruits, then according to Ephesians, he's not really ready to be the head of a household.
Could you unpack that a bit? Head of a household. What does that really mean in this context? Is it about being the boss or?
No, not really about being the boss. It's framed more as spiritual leadership, responsibility, nurturing. It's about serving the family, guiding them towards Christ, looking out for their spiritual and, practical well-being, kind of like how Christ serves the church. So for you, the listener, this gives you some concrete things to actually look for to gauge that spiritual depth and readiness.
That makes sense. It's a practical measure. Now, building on character and readiness, principle 4 shifts to the dynamic between people. Godly intent. Is he pursuing you? This one feels really countercultural today, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, especially with how dating works now. But the design presenting here puts the man in the role of the initiator. It references Proverbs, he who finds a wife finds a good thing. And it uses the Adam and Eve story. Eve didn't go looking for Adam. Adam recognized her. So the message really for you as the woman is that you don't need to engineer situations or, try to make him notice you. The idea is to trust that God, when the timing is right, will make the right man recognize you. It leans on ecclesialities, that idea of everything having its season. It suggests trusting divine timing over maybe forcing things.
That's definitely a different perspective on who takes the lead, maybe even a freeing one for some. Okay, so beyond the pursuit dynamic, Principle 5 asks about practical readiness. Does he have a plan and a place? Is he actually ready for marriage?
Exactly. Readiness here isn't just emotional, it's also spiritual and, importantly, financial, according to the source. It points to 1 Timothy 5.8, which is pretty blunt. If someone doesn't provide for their own household, they've denied the faith. So this forces you to ask a tough question. Is he coming to you with real intention, prepared to build a life? Or is he maybe just looking for a comfortable spot, seeking convenience rather than truly wanting to love and commit to your heart?
That's a challenging point, especially now when stability can look so different for people. It really stresses practical readiness and clear motives, things that can get lost in the romance. All right, moving to Principle 6. We look beyond the individual. Observe his circle, friends and family. We've all heard versions of show me your friends. But how seriously does this source take that?
Very seriously. It quotes Paul in 1 Corinthians, "Bad company corrupts good character." It argues that a man's inner circle is a real reflection of his values. And it doesn't stop there. It also says, look at how he treats his mother or speaks about her. It connects this to honoring parents, suggesting it mirrors how he'll likely treat his wife. So the advice is to actively observe. Are there patterns of, say, unresolved issues, broken promises, general instability in his life or circle? These are flagged as potential red flags you should really pay attention to.
That's useful, looking at the whole picture, the influences, the patterns, not just the person in isolation.
Oh, yeah.
So we've looked at the man, around the man. Now Principle 7 looks at his direction. Walking in purpose, his God-given assignment. It makes the point that God gave Adam work before he gave him a wife.
Yeah, and that's presented as significant. The idea is a man who's just drifting, idle, lacking direction. He's not really positioned to lead a family yet. The source pushes you to ask, is he vision-minded? Does he have a sense of purpose? Or is he just kind of getting by? It even quotes Proverbs, where there is no vision, the people perish. The ideal presented is that your future husband should already be moving in his God-given purpose. And crucially, the partnership should enhance both your callings, work together, not pull one person off track.
That's a powerful idea for you, the listener, that maybe a man should have his own mission sorted before seeking a partner. It suggests a foundation for a shared life purpose. Then Principle 8, complementary callings. Alignment, not conflict, seems to follow naturally from that. Sounds like finding a good fit for your life's direction.
Absolutely. It emphasizes synergy. The idea is God brings people together who genuinely complement and, in a way, complete each other. Like Ecclesiastes says, two are better than one. But there's a strong warning, too. If your calling and his calling are fundamentally at odds, that relationship is going to become really draining emotionally, spiritually, maybe even physically. It also adds a key point. If being with him makes you feel like you have to fundamentally change who you are just to be loved, that's a big sign he might not be the one God intended to complement you.
That's such an important distinction for you to consider, the difference between complementing each other's journey versus feeling forced to compromise your core self or calling. Okay, Principle 9 zooms in on inner wholeness, emotionally healthy and spiritually healed. This feels essential for any relationship, doesn't it?
It really does. The source connects it to how a man loves himself, suggesting that reflects how he'll love you, echoing that love your neighbor as yourself idea. And it makes a really crucial point. A man carrying a lot of unhealed wounds from his past will inevitably let that bleed into the marriage. And then comes this really direct statement. You are not his healer. Jesus is. The implication is he needs to be pursuing wholeness in Christ before he's ready to hold your heart.
So if Jesus is the healer, what does that mean practically if you see someone struggling?
Right.
How does the source suggest you tell the difference between being supportive and trying to be the healer?
Well, the focus seems to be on whether he is actively pursuing his own healing through Christ. You can be a supportive friend, absolutely, but the source implies that the heavy lifting of healing is his job, with God's help. If he's not actively doing that work, he's likely not ready for the kind of deep commitment marriage requires. So for you, it underlines how vital that individual healing journey is before you commit to someone.
Makes sense. All right, the final principle, number 10, spiritual direction. Does he draw you closer to God or away? This feels like the ultimate bottom line for a faith-based approach.
It really is presented that way. A godly man, in this view, leads you towards holiness. It references Ephesians again, how Christ loved the church. That's the model. So the red flag couldn't be clearer. If being with a man leads you into sin or consistently pulls you away from your relationship with Christ, he's not the one God sent. Any relationship, it argues, that distances you from your first love, Jesus is ultimately just too costly. Its impact on your spiritual walk is the final test.
Wow. Okay, so after laying out all those indicators, the source brings in this really beautiful concept, a priceless love paid in full, which is tied to that verse, we love him because he first loved us.
Yes, and this is all about reminding you of your inherent worth in God's eyes. The source stresses that your value was established when Jesus redeemed you. It quotes 1 Corinthians, you were bought at a price. And this leads to a really searching question for you. If Jesus gave everything for his bride, the church, should you settle for a man who isn't willing to sacrifice for your honor, your purpose, your soul, understanding that worth should absolutely shape the standards you hold?
We've covered a huge amount today, unpacking these 10 principles from how to recognize your king. It's clear this approach isn't just about finding someone compatible. It's about discerning a king who aligns with these deeper divine principles.
Exactly. And the source rounds it all off with a prayer for discernment, which kind of captures the essence of everything we've discussed. The themes in that prayer are really powerful. Surrendering your heart fully to God, truly grasping your value based on his love, asking him explicitly for discernment, and also asking for patience to wait for his best, and the courage, the boldness to actually walk away from anything less. It really drives home that idea of seeking wholeness in God first, so you don't end up settling for like a half-hearted love.
And that brings us to our final thought for you to chew on, drawing directly from the source's heart. Beloved, your worth was declared on the cross. You are God's daughter, and he will never send you a man who distracts you from him. Wait for your king, because your Father is the King of kings, and he gives good gifts to his children. That's echoing Matthew 7:11.
So as you go through your week, maybe reflect on these ideas. How might they change how you view relationships or even your own personal growth journey? What principle maybe resonated most with you?